Picture this. You wake up totally exhausted, even after, a full 8 hours of sleep. You finally sit down at your desk to start the day, and immediately your chest just feels tight. A completely minor, totally routine email pops up in your inbox, and your heart rate literally spikes. Or maybe you experience the exact opposite end of the spectrum. You just feel completely numb. You stare at your screen, totally detached, unable to summon even an ounce of energy to care anymore. You tell yourself, I just need a vacation, or maybe I just need to be more disciplined. Push through it. But the exhaustion doesn't leave, and that underlying anxiety, it just doesn't lift. Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are looking right under the hood of human burnout to understand why this incredibly frustrating paradox of modern exhaustion happens to so many of us.
So if that opening scenario sounded a little too familiar to you, you're likely falling into a very common trap. You really have to ask yourself, why are you trying to solve a biological problem with a psychological solution? See, the issue here isn't your work ethic, it's not your time management, and it's definitely not your mindset. Your nervous system is physically stuck. It has literally lost the ability to downregulate. To truly understand why high performers break down, and more importantly how to fix it, we have to completely shift our paradigm and look at the physical biology of your brain and body.
All right, let's dive into Section 1, the biological reality of burnout. We're going to explore the master control center of your energy.
To really wrap our heads around burnout, we have to understand this underlying architecture. Your autonomic nervous system is basically the subconscious operating system running your entire body. It manages everything from your breathing and heart rate all the way to digestion and threat detection. And it has two primary branches that work like a beautiful, highly evolved machine. On one side, we have the sympathetic nervous system. Think of this as your biological gas pedal. It's responsible for mobilization. Whenever a threat appears, boom, it floods your system with cortisol and adrenaline, pushes blood to your muscles, and gets you ready to fight or flee. On the flip side, we have the parasympathetic nervous system. This is your brake pedal. It's all about resting, digesting, and recovering. It repairs cellular damage and lets you fall into deep restorative sleep. Now, in a perfectly healthy nervous system, you transition smoothly between the two, right? Gas pedal, then brake pedal.
But here's where the whole system kind of breaks down for us today. Modern work doesn't operate like a temporary physical threat. You aren't running from a bear in the woods. Modern work is a continuous psychological threat. We're talking about endless unread emails, looming sales targets, constant smartphone notifications pinging you, ongoing financial pressures. Because the threat never actually leaves the room, your foot never leaves the gas pedal. And when you keep that gas pedal pressed straight to the floor for months or even years, your system adapts. Which brings us to Section 2, your brain in emergency mode. Let's look at the actual physical changes in how your brain processes information during this chronic sympathetic activation. Take the amygdala, for example. That's your brain's built-in alarm bell. In a burned-out state, it becomes wildly hypersensitive. It starts seeing danger where there absolutely is none. So a vague Slack message from your boss? It isn't processed as just an email. Your biology literally treats it like a predator lurking in the bushes. Meanwhile, look at your prefrontal cortex. That's the logical, rational problem-solving part of your brain. It basically goes offline. Your biology is aggressively prioritizing immediate survival over long-term planning or creative thought. This is exactly why, when you're burnt out, you literally cannot focus on complex tasks. Your brain is rerouting all its power to the alarm system.
But here's the thing. The human body cannot sustain a permanent state of emergency. Eventually, the adrenaline just runs out, your cortisol receptors become blunted, the whole engine overheats. And when your system can no longer sustain that fight-or-flight response, it violently pulls the emergency brake. This drops you into what is clinically known as dorsal vagal shutdown. It is the deepest, darkest level of burnout. It's a complete freeze response. You aren't just tired at this point. Your biology is actively conserving energy by shutting down non-essential functions. You feel intense lethargy, apathy, even a sense of dissociation. You desperately want to care about your work or your life, but the biological mechanism for motivation has quite literally been powered down.
So, how do we measure this? Psychiatrists use a really helpful framework to see where a person actually sits on this burnout spectrum. Let's move to Section 3, the window of tolerance.
I want you to imagine a zone where your nervous system is perfectly balanced. Inside this window, you can handle stress, you can face a difficult conversation, and you remain grounded. You're resilient. But when you are burned out, that window of tolerance shrinks dramatically. Things that used to be incredibly easy now push you completely outside of that window. When you're pushed above it, you enter hyperarousal. This is the panic, the irritability, racing thoughts. You feel totally wired yet exhausted. When you're pushed below the window, you hit hypoarousal. This is the numbness, the crushing exhaustion, that heavy, empty feeling. What happens to so many high achievers is they bounce violently between these two extremes. They rely on the anxiety of hyperarousal to just force themselves through the work week, and then they completely collapse into hypoarousal on the weekends. They never actually spend time inside the window, which means they never ever actually feel safe.
And that leads us to a pretty profound realization about recovery. True rest is not simply the absence of work. True rest is the biological presence of safety. This is a crucial takeaway. If your body does not physically feel safe, it absolutely will not repair itself. Sitting on the couch obsessing and worrying about work, biologically speaking, that is not rest.
This biological reality completely shatters the traditional advice we always hear, which brings us to Section 4, the push-through fallacy.
When a driven type A person realizes their output is dropping, what do they usually do? Right, they try to push harder. They download some new productivity app, they force themselves to wake up at 5 a.m. for an ice bath, they try to just apply more discipline. But applying discipline to a severely dysregulated nervous system is literally like whipping an exhausted horse. Sure, it might run a few more miles out of pure terror, but eventually it will collapse. You cannot outwork biological exhaustion. You also can't just think your way out of it. Things like positive thinking, mindset shifts, even cognitive behavioral therapy, those are top-down approaches. They use the mind to try and calm the body. But when your nervous system is in a state of deep, primal threat, the pathways from your logical brain down to your emotional brain are restricted. The body is firing danger signals up to the brain way faster than the brain can send calm signals down to the body.
So to actually rebuild a burned-out nervous system, you have to reverse the entire process. You need a bottom-up approach. You have to use the physical body to convince the brain that it is safe. This is called somatic regulation, and it is absolutely the key to manually reversing the burnout process.
So how do we actually pull this off? Let's look at Section 5, Rebuilding with Somatic Regulation. These are the actionable, evidence-based protocols you need to manually teach your biology how to access that brake kettle again.
The absolute fastest way to access your autonomic nervous system is through your breath. Think about it. It's the only autonomic function you can consciously control. When you're stressed, you tend to take these shallow breaths, prioritizing the inhale, which just signals more danger to the brain. To trigger the parasympathetic nervous system, our brake pedal, you must prioritize the exhale. Neuroscientists like Dr. Andrew Huberman highlight an incredibly powerful tool for this called the physiological sigh. It takes just 2 simple steps. First, take 2 sharp inhales through the nose. This double inhale fully inflates the lungs and pops open these tiny air sacs called alveoli. Second, take 1 long, slow exhale through the mouth. This offloads carbon dioxide and literally slows the beating of your heart. Doing just 3 to 5 of these when you feel panicked acts as an immediate biological circuit breaker, pulling you right back into your window of tolerance.
But let's be real. Breathing alone isn't going to magically fix severe burnout. You also have to address how your body processes physical space through something called somatic grounding. When you're overloaded, you lose connection to the present moment. Grounding forces your nervous system to register physical reality, reminding your brainstem that you are not actively under attack right now. Here are 3 awesome ways to do this. First, orienting. Literally stop staring at your screen. Look around the room, slowly scan your environment, and find 3 visible things, noticing their colors. This panoramic vision immediately signals safety to the brainstem. Second, proprioceptive input. When you're trapped in that awful brain fog, use heavy physical sensation to bring the system back online. Something simple like wrapping up in a weighted blanket. And third, direct physical sensation. Press your feet incredibly firmly into the floor or jump into a cold shower. These intense physical inputs interrupt that endless loop of chronic stress.
Finally, and this is crucial, you cannot heal a burn while your hand is still resting on the hot stove, right? You must ruthlessly audit your environment for micro-threats. I'm talking about those small, repetitive stressors that keep your gas pedal lightly pressed all single day. Every time your phone buzzes, your brain releases a tiny spike of adrenaline. You have to build artificial boundaries to protect your biology. Turn off those non-essential notifications, batch check your emails to just twice a day. And please, create a physical transition ritual between work and rest. Just slamming your laptop shut at the kitchen table isn't enough. You need a clear physical cue, like taking a walk around the block or even just changing your clothes, that signals to your body that the hunt is over and it's finally safe to power down.
Rebuilding a burned-out nervous system is definitely not a quick weekend hack. It took months, maybe even years, of chronic stress to wire your body into a state of hypervigilance, and it's going to take time and consistency to wire it back to safety. But the truly incredible thing about the human brain is neuroplasticity, and it works in both directions. Yes, you can train your nervous system to tolerate insane amounts of stress, but you can also train it to deeply, profoundly recover.
So stop judging yourself for being exhausted. Your body is literally just doing exactly what it was designed to do to keep you alive. Your job now is to show it that the war is over. So, I'll leave you with this final, provocative thought to reflect on. Are you still trying to outwork biological exhaustion? Or are you finally ready to treat your physical biology with the exact same respect you give your professional ambitions? Think about it. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and we'll see